Afternoon, people. Once again, Gavin Barland back in the studio, and we're being the blackest of black sheep, as usual. And we're back to the topic of Ukraine. We're very, very contemporary. Here we are. We've already touched on Ukraine, and yet Ukraine is...
still a hot topic.
Exactly. Still a hot topic, and it is interesting. Now... We're not going to... Okay, we touched on the reasons why Hungary refuses to become involved. And the Prime Minister, most recently in Tusnád, said, Hungary has one goal, which is to remain on the sidelines. We cannot get involved in this war. Again, for people who don't know, it's historical. Essentially, the First World War ended with Hungary's defeat, or the defeat of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and then 72% of Hungary's territory was essentially stripped and given to other countries. As a result of which, and this is the thing which I accept is very, very difficult for Westerners or non-Hungarians to understand, especially for Westerners who have, let's face it, historical education has been put on the back burner for approximately
100 years.
Exactly. It's not exactly up there with the important topics. But say, for example, I can speak from personal experience that it took me years to understand what it meant to lose 72% of your country, to have that territory given to other countries. And it only came home to me when we traveled into a neighboring country and you suddenly realize, but hang on, everybody looks Hungarian, everybody speaks Hungarian, everybody's dressed like Hungarians, they're all Hungarians. And that's when it finally came home to me. This is the situation we have in what is now Western Ukraine, Transcarpathia, in that we've got 150,000 to 200,000 numbers. Obviously, it's difficult to count, especially given that the country is in the middle of a war. But these people are not, as several Westerners have asked me, it's like, oh, they went there to work. It's like, oh, God, no. No.
They're born there.
Exactly. They were born there. They were born there in lands where their families traditionally had always lived. So it's not a question of them crossing the border, but rather at the end of the First World War, lots of people said, I didn't cross the border crossed me.
Yeah. So
we know that there are lots of Hungarians there. We don't know exactly how many, but it would be a very, very cold-hearted, nasty, cruel government who would say, okay, we will become involved in the war because automatically we would be painting targets on the backs of our own patriots. Yeah. And so I say, no government, I'd like to think that no government anywhere in the world would be prepared to kill its own citizens, even if by proxy.
Well, that's a good point. There's a lot of conteos circulating around 911 and all this kind of stuff. So it's difficult to say. And also in a recent terrorist attack by Hamas against Israel, many people question the official story. How is it possible to look over such a tremendous effort to prepare such an attack? I don't believe it. I don't believe that any serious government would risk of getting caught in organizing such a heinous crime. So I don't believe it. But many people just don't believe it. And just back to your question, how can people still feel after 100 years that how can we remember the dismemberment of Hungary? And like you said, you travel 200 kilometers from Hungary and people, you are still surrounded by Hungarians. So this is something people won't forget. And when someone loses a limb or two or even three in a war,
exactly,
he will remember it for the rest of his life.
Exactly.
And the family will remember because the grandpa had only one hand or one leg or something like that. So this is something we want and we can't forget.
Exactly. But that's a perfect analogy. People often say, well, can't you just get over it? Come on, get over it. And you say, no, it is not like some American trauma is like, well, my dog had an accident this morning. No, this is not like this.
It's not the last valley.
Exactly. This is the case, like you said, if you've got 4 limbs, cut 3 of them off and say, oh, just forget about the others. Yeah. Come on, pull yourself together, Balin. Yeah. It's impossible. But there are other reasons why we still want to remain outside of this war. And as far as I can see, there are cracks appearing to appear. There are cracks appearing in the wall. This coalition of the willing, the United Nations. What am I talking about?
United Nations of Europe. Yes,
exactly. The European Union is now seemingly getting to the stage where they're starting to realize that Zelensky is potentially not the saint that they made him out to be.
Or just don't start it. the whole smear campaign that has been started against Zelensky is so outrageous, so disgusting. I can't find the words. The guy who previously was a hero of democracy, he was an idol, he was a role model to follow and stuff like that. And suddenly, in the mainstream media, an article appears which paints him as a homosexual, living together with his second in command and sleeping together and going to the gym together and God knows what else they are doing when they're among themselves and stuff like that. And the very same magazines or newspapers that produce LGBTQ propaganda, this is just outright disgusting, and it's a very wrong thing to think that people won't notice that change.
But this is the strange thing that how can these two things coexist? At the same time, we've been encouraged. People, what you're not gay? Well, have you tried it? I mean, it's very.
How can you refuse it?
Everybody's doing it, so come on, catch up. On the one hand, we've got that. We've got this huge amount of. Well, it is nothing less than propaganda.
It is propaganda.
And at the same time, now Zelensky is being attacked for what? Potentially being a victim of that propaganda. He saw the Western propaganda and said, hey, wow, this looks like a great idea. I'll need to try it with my second in command. Yeah. I mean, let's not forget that I'm not sure that the Western world is aware of Zelensky's previous career before he became president of Ukraine.
Yeah, probably not.
And there are videos. I mean, they're not difficult to find. I mean, they've been shown across Hungary all the time.
If you type into the browser that Zelensky naked, and you immediately find a video, a true video, not a fake Russian propaganda video, a true video showing a television performance by the current president of Ukraine.
Exactly. Dancing, naked, and using his penis to play the piano.
I wouldn't like to be this kind of.
Now
you have to put an 18 circle on.
No. Surely this is a statement of fact. But the fact that you sort of say, okay, so this is the man who was selected. This is the man who was elected, potentially elected. We don't know.
He was elected. The election, during which he was elected to be Ukraine's president, was as clear as how should I say, legal as possible in Ukraine. There was nothing wrong with that. But the problem was that he promised peace.
Right.
He's coming from a Russian-speaking region.
Yep.
And he promised peace, and he promised to stop the hostilities which were ongoing at the time. I think it was in 2019. By 5 years they were going on in eastern Ukraine, and Crimea was snatched away by the Russians. So he promised to stop that process, and instead he made a war out of it. Of course, the Russians attacked. We can't deny it. But there was a continuous set of provocations.
But I mean, also we've got the fact that Zelensky didn't do this on his own.
Yeah.
I mean, if we go back into the 20th century, we know that the agricultural capabilities of Ukraine are incredible. Essentially, you throw something in the ground and a tree grows. And obviously, we've seen evidence that Biden and his family, when they were in power, they made deals with various people. You can see that the European Union always wants to get in on some dodgy deal. They did. The European Union does, I have to say, have a sort of tradition of provoking a crisis and then dropping people into it. And you do get the idea that this is along the lines the European Union said, go on, go for it, we'll be there to, oh no, we're not there for you, which is reminiscent of 1956 in Hungary, where the Americans told the Hungarians, just hang on, we're coming. Oh no, actually, no, we've got something better to do.
I've been attacked in the Hungarian media for saying the exact same thing. In last year, August, there was a slip of the tongue of my previous boss, and I was defended him saying that we could have had a good outcome, that the West at the end didn't come to help us in 1956.
Right.
Because if they would have had come here, we should have had the same fate as the Ukrainians.
Exactly.
I was speaking not in a... ezt már ki kell vágni. Hogyan a feltételes mód?
Speaking in the conditional.
Yeah. I wasn't speaking in conditional. I was speaking in conditional. So that is the fate what is hanging above the head of Ukraine, that they fought for Western interests. They were promised everything. They received very little. And now they will be left in the country with a destroyed country, with a destroyed population and a gun society. And at the end, the outcome is the same.
Exactly.
As more or less sane military analysts could have told you in advance.
Yep. I mean, that's very strange. I mean, again, it does seem strange that you were attacked in the media for that, because surely we are allowed to express different opinions, and and different opinions.
Allegedly.
Oh, allegedly. Okay, fair enough. Okay. All right, this is why I never get invited to parties. But surely, if we have the intellectual capabilities, we should be able to discuss things without it descending into, name calling and slanging matches. I mean, okay, maybe this is a pipe dream. I don't know.
No, you are basically right. The problem is that we are continuously talking about these kind of ideas.
Right.
We discuss these kind of things as if they were completely true,
right,
and valid for everybody. And sooner or later, the very nasty thing called double standard raises its ugly head. And it's coming back to the fact that it's a typical communist approach to things, that to apply a double standard, you show yourself, you paint yourself as on a much higher pedestal, in a much higher position, and your opponent is very low somewhere. And if you apply double standards to it, then it's completely undefendable.
I mean, but this is the same thing. But we can see this at the moment. For me, I always find that there's a problem that we accept that for every government, doesn't matter which country, they are obliged to reduce things to the lowest possible level in order to apply statistics. So say, for example, they say, if we look at the World Health Organization, they say, everybody's blood pressure has to be between this and this. Fine. But that's obviously not true. There are some people who are born with naturally low blood pressure. There are some people born with naturally high blood pressure. If you give them medication to either increase or decrease their blood pressure, they will not be well people as a result. And you can still say, fine, but once again, we are trying to fit the entirety of humanity into this box or that box. And we're always going to have problems with that. And we can see that this is what's happening in the West, for example, as regards Ukraine. They have tried to make it fit into into a bite-sized media block, which everybody can swallow and say, Balint, you've read the newspapers. What do you say? Well, the Ukrainians are good Slavs and the Russians are bad Slavs.
Yeah,
it's like,
as simple as that.
Exactly, simple as that. Now, nothing is ever as simple as that. Say, yes, it is, because I read page 2 of the newspaper and it says Zelensky is a saint and Putin is the devil. It's like, well, obviously, that can't be true. There are very, very few saints. I mean, there are a couple, located in churches.
Not recently.
Greta Thunberg, for your information, is not a saint. She's an ill-educated anti-Semite. But okay, fine. We'll leave her to one side. But the problem is that people with very little information, mainly people in the West, Western Europe, America, Britain, they don't know the history of Ukraine. They don't know anything about the Ukrainian people. They don't know anything about the Russians. They know nothing about the former Soviet republics. And yet they have been fed these bite-sized chunks of information, which now leads them to believe that, well, this guy's good, this guy's bad, these people are good, these people are bad. Even though at base level, everybody knows that you cannot apply an adjective like good or bad to a society.
Yeah, every single person in a society. Yeah, but my main issue is with this kind of approach, that where is the criticism? And we have been taught in ground school that the Western science outpaced everybody else because he was always ready to question his own findings, even his own findings. And that brought us forward. And that brought us until now above all kind of other approaches, irrespective of culture or whatever else. So basically, when we come to an age when we have to believe, which is in a press, we have to believe everything which governments state. And, you have to remember Ronald Reagan, who said, if you hear I am from the government, I'm here to help, then run. So basically, this kind of, I wouldn't call it cynical, this kind of curious approach that is this necessarily true is gone. And has been banished. It's not naturally gone. It has been banished. So if we come to this point that every single media information is true, then where are the Watergate case and all this kind of stuff? So what has happened to the Western society that people like you always mention, certain people that they believe everything they saw in the press, everything. And if they say that Loch Ness is true, then they will go there and try to fish that poor beast.
But also the same thing is that there are plenty of reasons why, we can see that Ukraine is in a terrible situation. But we can see that the West aren't prepared to give up on this, their goal to have this proxy war. And they even have a problem with us saying this is a proxy war. And you say, well, what else is it?
Yeah.
You're not there. You don't have boots on the ground. It's not your young people dying. You are sending Ukrainians to fight using weapons that you provided. This is the dictionary definition of a proxy war.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand how logically they can hope to pull the wool over people's eyes. Okay, it's another thing that they have pulled the wool over people's eyes. But the fact that we seem to have far more information about what's happening in Ukraine than they do in the West. Now, okay, I understand this. We are next door. We have a vested interest in keeping out. So we're paying more attention to Ukraine and what's going on in Ukraine. We want to make sure that Hungarians are protected. Hungarians, ethnic Hungarians living there are protected. And we've got the case of József Sebestyén, which is a very, very disturbing indication. Now, okay, the Ukrainians have claimed that nothing happened, that they don't know that this happened, how it happened, no idea, but they would say that. Essentially, an ethnic Hungarian was conscripted, and during, as far as I'm aware, the training, he was beaten so badly by various officers, various training officers, that he later died as a result of the injuries he sustained. Now, the Ukrainians have said that didn't happen. Well, they would. Fine. But the interesting thing is that this shows that there is a certain lawlessness in Ukraine. So it doesn't matter that von der Leyen says that Ukraine is the beacon of democracy. It's beaten corruption. Not only is it fighting against corruption, but as far as von der Leyen is concerned, Ukraine is the first country in the history of the world, the universe, to actually beat corruption. So say, well, congratulations. Certainly things seem slightly different from our point of view, but there you go. And yet we're continually attacked for rule of law misdemeanors, as seen by the European Union. The Ukrainians have just killed somebody who was a soldier preparing to be sent to the front line to fight for Ukraine. Well, it's got to be illegal, surely.
Yeah.
You've seen videos. Again, I wonder whether these videos have made it to the West, because in Hungary you see lots of videos. I've seen thousands of the press gangs. I mean, they say things like, "Oh, roaming conscription groups." It's like, no, let's call a spade a spade. It's a press gang, people. It's using guile and violence. You've got people being abducted on the streets of Ukraine, people being tricked, people being knocked off their bikes and thrown into the backs of vans, people being assaulted, knocked unconscious, taken away screaming.
Yeah, but it's the same situation when we speak about Hungarian minorities in the surrounding countries. This same thing has been, how should I say, covered up.
Right.
If there were no serious journalists or somebody else writing about it, it doesn't exist.
Right.
And the same with these kind of press gangs, the same with this approach to forcibly recruiting people into the Ukrainian army. And it's much easier to say that's Russian propaganda. The problem is that Zelensky was attacked, not because of this, because that's completely violation of human rights and all this kind of stuff. But he was attacked because he tried to suspend the strong arm of the European Union, which he used to control Ukraine, the anti-corruption agencies.
Right.
Saying that they were corrupt. Basically, Ukraine is a big corruption hole. Just one story about a conscripted person I know in person.
Uh-huh.
He told that when he was conscripted, he was given a shaggy uniform and a rusty AK and a rusty helmet. And he was told officially by the officers of his own unit that he can buy a better gun with optics, he can buy a bulletproof vest, he can buy a Kevlar helmet, and all this kind of stuff from his own money. Jeez. So this is going so deep, and on the other hand, this is also hushed up in Western media that there are tens of thousands and even more people living in Ukraine, hiding in their own basement, trying to everything to get to avoid the attention of the authorities. Don't tell me this is normal.
Exactly.
Don't tell me that you have to put every single person of a population to the front line to fight for a country. How long? I mean, we Hungarians know that we have fought innumerable wars, but we always knew when to stop.
Exactly. But I mean, the other thing is, like, you can see, I've got friends in Ukraine, and they're there, but their children aren't. Their children have been spirited away to various other European countries. We know that lots of people have, when they saw that the war was coming, or in the first few months, they got out as quickly as they could before they shut the borders down. We can even see still now there are soldiers, conscripts, trying to cross the borders and dying, risking life and limb to get out of the country. And like you said, there are tens of thousands who are hiding in Ukraine, living maybe in the cellar of the family house, or maybe living close by, but making sure that they're not caught. At the same time, people say, oh, well, this is normal. Fine, you can argue that. I would suggest that forced conscription is not a good idea. But if you've lost, I mean, we're talking about Ukraine in 1990 when it's finally left the Soviet Union, had, as far as I'm aware, 50 million people.
Around, yeah.
Apparently now they're down to 20 million. Okay, so the Russians have still got 140 million. You've got 20 million. Of those 20 million, some are old, some are women, some are old women, some are too young. The numbers won't lie. Mathematically, this is an impossibility. Fine. Until somebody sends more people to fight, then you don't have a snowball's chance in hell. But the point is that at the same time as we're seeing these horrible, aggressive, violent press gang videos, we're also seeing lots of videos from Kiev and from Odessa where young people whose families have connections, whose families have money to pay the right people, are partying as though nothing has changed. Now, this is an obvious indication of corruption. So all that the European Union says is a lie, or at least all that von der Leyen says is a lie, because we now do have people in Luxembourg who are raising concerns about the fact that, okay, there was an ethnic Hungarian who appears to have been killed by the Ukrainian state. That's obviously illegal. That's obviously a problem. And if we completely agree or keep telling people that Ukraine is the absolute paragon of virtue, which von der Leyen seems to think it is, then that goes against it. I would suggest that we've got the situation in the European Union's empire where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Yeah, it looks like.
Which suggests that the European Union is out of control, which is something I definitely agree with. But there doesn't seem to have been any response from the Europeans, from the Western Europeans, it's been reported in the press that Zelensky's government, there were spontaneous demonstrations against him disemboweling various anti-corruption agencies.
Yeah.
Okay, now, I'm always a little bit suspicious of a spontaneous demonstration. I don't think anything's that spontaneous.
Yeah, it's always suspicious to have a spontaneous demonstration when the Western press is immediately there.
Exactly.
On a side note, European Union is very proud of his migration and asylum policies. And they accept people from all around the world fleeing famine, fleeing internal conflict, fleeing wars. And
fleeing economic mismanagement.
That's another story, but let's try to paint the picture in a more nicer way than it is.
Oh, so we're playing with the European Union's rules. Okay.
Yeah, but the slap comes at the end. Okay, so basically they are very proud of it.
Yep.
And then suddenly, from a very close country, come a certain influx of people who are definitely fleeing a war. And in Germany they're saying that the Ukrainians in the conscription age, they should return to Ukraine to fight, or they don't receive any support anymore.
What a lovely...
Can you imagine this? And it's the Germans who say it. I mean, please, how can be so insensitive and how can be so stupid at the same time? I mean, and there's a third option. You can go back to fight, or you don't receive any, or maybe we can find you a job. I mean, please. There has been hundreds of thousands, even millions of people who fled from Africa, Asia, whatever. They're not forced to work or to go back to fight.
In fact, I've got a couple of friends in Germany, and they said that they're not allowed to work for something like 2 or 4 years. And so I said,
why?
That's the way the German legislation has been written. It's like, no, you came here, you can't work. So even if, I'm not suggesting that many of these economic migrants want to work. They're quite happy to get handouts from the state. They're quite happy to suckle at the teat of the Bundeswehr. But they're not allowed to work anyway. So if they wanted to work, it would be illegal. You've got the same thing in Britain. You've got people in London who are refugees or classified as refugees. They're put up in hotels free of charge. And
recently they hired a 5-star hotel for them. A 5.
The lack of sensitivity is quite astonishing. But these people, they say that. So you go in, you walk past these hotels where all these poor migrants are, or these poor refugees, or whatever the hell you want to call them, and there are all these food delivery bikes parked outside. One goes in, one comes out. So they are working. Not only are they receiving money, not only are they receiving free accommodation, free food, etc., but they're also working as well, but also working illegally, so that's not helping the state. Fine. But to go back to the Germans, okay, I accept that this is an incredibly harsh, ugly thing for the Germans to say. And once again, we get to this strange idea where it's like it's far easier for Western Europeans to be racist against white people
Yeah.
from their own backgrounds, because they daren't say anything about the Afghans, the Somalis, or whatever. Said, oh no, if I say anything about them, I'm going to be castigated. I'm going to be crucified for being a racist. So I'm going to lash out at these people who are essentially ethnically similar to me. But if we go back to the Germans have got they've got history with this. They have prior experience, because if you think about it, when German reunification came along, there wasn't a reunification. The Western Germans weren't prepared to have anything to do with their genetically identical brothers, sisters, cousins. Exactly. So we have this situation where the Germans have shown their hand before, where Angela Merkel comes out and says, "Wir machen das," or "Wir machen das," whatever the hell she said. Yeah, we can do this. No, you bloody can't. Fine. But you couldn't do it with your own people when they tried to reunite the country. And it took how many years? And when you go to Berlin, you can still see, oh, that's east, that's west. You can still see.
Yeah, politically, it's also clearly visible.
Exactly. I mean, okay, it's another thing that the Germans were so stupid that they actually elected Merkel, who was born in West Berlin and then taken by her mad father to East Berlin, grew up in the Communist Party there, and then came back and said, oh, well, have you heard the term sleeper agent? Oh, obviously not.
The Manchurian agent?
No,
what it is.
No, the Manchurian candidate? No idea what that is. But we've got the same thing here, where it seems like a disaster in the making. I can't see anything good coming out of this. Ukraine is fighting. And as the Hungarian Prime Minister said, obviously it's difficult for them. It's a no-win situation. They cannot do anything but fight. But at the same time, most of their fighting-age men have left, understandably. Who wants to send their son to die? Nobody, I would suggest. The country has been destroyed. The infrastructure was never there in the first place. The infrastructure had never been updated. The country has been mired in corruption ever since it left the Soviet Union, but I would suggest that it was mired in corruption before that time as well. We've got problems also with the fact that the West seems to have forgotten about the existence of the Ukrainian mafia.
Yeah.
And it seems a bit strange, because I remember 20 years ago, people were talking in the West about the Ukrainian mafia. Oh, God, we need to do something about that problem. Now, of course, the Ukrainian mafia doesn't exist. It's just evaporated. Von der Leyen hasn't seen anything.
Imagine that, when hundreds of thousands of war-weary and experienced fighters will appear on the streets. I have a brand new story. Tuareg rebels have used drones seen in the Ukraine war from both sides, fiber optic control drones which cannot be jammed, using against official army and also Russian Africa Corps troops, basically mercenaries. Well, what happens when if the Tuareg rebels in the bloody Sahara can build these kind of drones? Why can't organized crime groups in Europe do it?
Exactly.
And imagine that those people who have experience, they know how to build it, they know how to use it, will appear in the number of hundreds of thousands. Okay, not everybody is a drone operator.
True.
Let's suppose he was a Sturmtrupp, he was basically an assaulter in assault infantry. He has the knowledge, he has the skills, and he's not fearing to shed blood.
No.
What will happen? They will come here, they will try to remake the markets. And what will come? Bloodbath.
Exactly.
And the European police will just stand there, clenching their outdated guns and think, oh my God, I don't want to, there's a firefight. You should be the bloody people who
go there and stop it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, again, we are not clairvoyant. We're not sitting here. There isn't a crystal ball underneath the table. This is just pure logic.
Yeah, it is.
We've seen, if it weren't enough that we should generally be afraid of mafias, we also know that the one type of weapon that is difficult to get hold of in Ukraine is the handgun, which apparently has strange historical reasons, but for whatever reason, that's a leftover from the Soviet times. Handguns, you have to dance through and jump through lots of hoops. You have to do lots and lots of things to get a handgun. But at the same time, at the start of the war, Zelensky's government handed out anything which even looked like an assault weapon.
Yeah.
And these have all disappeared.
Yeah, tens of thousands.
Exactly. And you sort of say, well, that's not a good idea. That's a bad idea. I mean, I just saw there was a diagram saying that they asked Russian, Ukrainian experts and Western experts where they thought the weapons would go eventually. Essentially, out of the country.
Yeah,
the only place they weren't going, the only place they said the weapons will not go is into Belarus.
Yeah.
I know, maybe they have enough, I don't know. But Poland, into Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, Romania, everywhere. And there was an interesting thing. They said that they expected lots of weapons to go into Russia, and then from Russia they would come back into Ukraine, and then they would travel on. This seems like a disaster waiting to happen. I cannot see that this is... I cannot see why people aren't waking up to the potential disaster that that the Western Europeans, they have opened Pandora's box.
Yeah, they have. And you know that the fallout will be that after the coming and inevitable Ukrainian defeat, okay, there's a small chance that Russia will collapse like they done in 1991 and 1970, but don't count on it. After that, what happens? And apart from the flow of weapons, apart from of people with post-traumatic stress disorder and all this kind of stuff, what else will come? There will come a humiliation for the West, because Afghanistan, they have lost and they cut their tails and ran away the Americans. It was still unjustifiable the way they left Afghanistan.
Yep.
And I fear that a very similar scenes will play out in Ukraine. And what will happen then? When will there be a soul searching? What we have done, basically, a country is destroyed, people are slaughtered and then fled, and there's chaos and stuff like that. I don't think so.
I mean, if we look back at the history of if we look back to the 20th century, how many times did the West attack Afghanistan? I mean, and they never won. They always
battlers painting.
Exactly, and they always came back with their tail between their legs. But they didn't. They never apologized. There was never any soul searching. They waited a few years and then went back and went back again and went back again. And then the Americans. Okay, that was the perfect example when the Americans went in after the Soviets and said, "Right now we're going to really sort things out." What a bloody mess. Fine. I don't think soul searching really features in the Western world.
Globalists don't have souls.
That's a good question. It's a rather philosophical question. Does the West have a soul? But the other thing is that nobody seems to be planning. I mean, okay, we saw the mess that the Americans left in Afghanistan. $4 billion worth of everything. And the beautiful thing was that when they said, well, these are just Afghans here, they're simple goat herds. They wouldn't know how to fly an Apache helicopter. Say, no, you idiot. They don't need to know how to do it. They can sell it to somebody who does. So it's quite simple. It's like, they've got all these super fantastic laser-guided weapons. It's like, yes, but he's at the level of goat herd. Yes, but he can sell it to somebody
who can copy it.
Exactly. So we've got that. We've got other problems. If you look at what happened after the fall of Iraq, infrastructure destroyed. Yeah. Electricity, we had that before. Sewage, we had that before. Water, we had that before. But after the Americans went in to liberate Iraq and bring democracy, say electricity, no. Sewage, no. Well, sewage, yes, everywhere. But fresh water, no. Okay, so we can logically presume that the same is awaiting Ukraine. The infrastructure, which was never in particularly good hands in the first place, has been completely destroyed. Who's going to rebuild it?
There are dreams that some companies will be involved. That I have a very, how should I say, unpolite question to those people. Those who control the land tell who's going to rebuild it, and all kind of prosperity or prospect coming out of this situation will be gone when the owner of the land will change hands. And this is something I don't get, that people are not even thinking about it, that current rules and current borders are upheld by the West. Because they drew these kind of borders, like Hungary's borders.
Yep.
Well, what happens if another power comes in? They will have different approach. They will have different interests. And what happens then? How will they be able to manage the shock that someone will withdraw the borders without their consent?
I don't know. I mean, that is going to be a huge psychological breaking point, because until now, nobody has challenged the West's right to do what it wants. Yeah. I mean, every time somebody brings this up, they're immediately shut down. It's like, well, we're allowed to do that because you did that. It's like, it's different. We're the West.
Yeah.
There's a hierarchy here and we're at the top. I mean, when the Chinese do something, people say, how dare you? Well, you did it last week. So, oh, yeah, that's different. That was us. You need to understand the rules here, China. I can't see, I mean, that's an incredibly valid point. The fact that it is going to lead, once again, we come back to that, what is that, cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance.
I mean, we keep on coming back to that. The double standards seem to be leading us to an area where your brain's just going to snap in half. I mean,
Yeah.
there is going to be a huge day of reckoning psychologically for the West. The other problem is that you should say, well, if we want to rebuild Ukraine in the future, who's going to do it? I mean, the only thing I can think of is that we've got all these economic migrants, refugees. Are they going to go over there and learn how to build houses? And I mean,
there were serious Ukrainian officials talking about this possibility. And there were Ukrainians asking that we are fighting for our own country. We are fighting to keep it as we like it. Why would you bring other people here? I mean, who is this country essentially for?
Exactly.
And this is something will come to more and more people's minds. And I think the globalists are really terrified by this thought, that people start asking those very simple and very basic questions. If you want to do it, in whose interest is this going on? And sooner or later, people will start asking, whose interest did Ukraine go to war?
Exactly.
Because the Russians attacked Ukraine, there's without question. From all point of view and from all aspects, Russia committed aggression. But it was not something out of the blue.
No.
It was long in coming.
Yep.
So basically, when these people will be start questioned by various people all around the world, I mean, that will be a huge loss for the credibility of the West and a huge loss for basically the soft power of the US and of course the European Union.
Jesus, the future is not bright.
No, it isn't. Welcome to the age of change.
My God.
And we started from Ukraine.
Exactly.
And there's a verse that because of the nail, the horseshoe is lost.
Yeah.
This is the whole process
Exactly.
going on in the front of our very eyes. And it's not a layman's perspective to understand these kind of things, but they are elected people and they are professionals who should know that when one domino falls, it can bring the rest down.
But I mean, okay, you say that these people aren't laymen. The problem is that they're not laymen. The problem is that they see themselves as being intellectually superior, and what they miss is common sense.
Yeah.
And the fact that you just laid it out. It's like the Ukrainians saying, well, we're fighting for us, not to provide a homeland for people who happen to be sort of like...
Yeah, coming from somewhere else.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you for getting me out of that.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
We're here.
Exactly, we're here. We're here and...
Get yourself together. We have to bring the next show together.
Right, are we done for today?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. Jesus. Bit heavy.
Yeah, my mother and my kids always keep telling me that, Dad, please say, my mom says, son, please tell me something positive. And I have nothing else to say, but good times only come after bad times. And now we're going through earth-shaking change. I don't know if I have told you in this show already. This is one of my favorite examples. That there was recently a huge earthquake in Myanmar, and there was a camera showing a family house. Was showing that the earth beside that piece of land shifted something like 10 meters.
Jesus.
Like I don't know, like in a bad movie or something like that. So we're seeing that now, right now, in front of our very eyes. So I suggest to our viewers and listeners to write down what they're doing in these times, because 10 or 15 years later, they will have to remember what they were doing at the time when the earth stood still or started moving.
Jesus. And on that happy note... All right, so don't expect too many positive thoughts.
No, not yet.
Prepare for the worst. It's like we go, okay, let's finish on a positive thing. We go back to Baden-Powell and the Scouts. Always be prepared.
Exactly. And then we are the area of change. And when these changes are finished, then we will see a better world, hopefully.
All right. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, me too.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Balint.